The alien ruins of Veshtarul loomed against the violet sky, ancient and foreboding. Marcus Blackwood adjusted his exosuit's environmental controls and checked his oxygen levels one more time. 3 hours of exploration time remained, not nearly enough to document the massive temple complex, but it would have to do. Base camp, this is Blackwood. I'm proceeding to the inner sanctum, he reported through his comm unit. Copy that, Blackwood, responded Technician Reeves. Remember, no touching artifacts without proper scanning first. Marcus smirked. When have I ever broken protocol? Do you want that list alphabetically or chronologically? Reeves chuckled. The archaeologist silenced his comm and ventured deeper into the ruins. 6 months of excavations had revealed a civilization far more advanced than humanity had initially believed, possibly even contemporaries of the enigmatic Alturians. But unlike the well-documented Alturian Empire, these people, the Vashani, had vanished without explanation roughly 1,000 years ago. The inner sanctum was surprisingly well preserved. Marcus's headlamp illuminated intricate wall carvings depicting beings that appeared humanoid but with distinctly non-human features, iridescent skin patterns, elongated limbs, and eyes that consumed nearly half their faces. At the chamber's center stood a solitary statue of what appeared to be a female figure, remarkably lifelike despite the millennium that had passed. Her expression conveyed a mixture of defiance and anguish, frozen in stone yet somehow vibrant. Unlike the other artifacts, this statue showed no signs of aging, no cracks, no erosion. Well, hello there, Marcus whispered, circling the figure. You're quite the mystery, aren't you? He scanned the statue with his handheld device. The readings made little sense, the material registered as organic tissue, not stone. Marcus adjusted his scanner, assuming it had malfunctioned. This can't be right, he muttered, tapping the device against his palm. As he leaned closer to examine the statue's face, his foot caught on an uneven tile. Marcus stumbled forward, his face colliding with the statue's. His lips inadvertently brushed against the cold stone of her mouth. Damn it, he cursed, pulling back in embarrassment despite being alone. A low hum began to emanate from the statue, soft at first, then increasing in intensity until the entire chamber vibrated. Hairline fractures appeared across the stone surface, light seeping through the cracks like molten gold. Marcus backed away, fumbling for his comm unit. Base camp. Something's happening with the artifact. I need. A blinding flash cut him off, forcing him to shield his eyes. When the light subsided, the statue was gone. In its place stood a living, breathing woman, her skin a pale lavender with intricate phosphorescent patterns tracing her arms and face. Her eyes, unnaturally large and entirely black, fixed on Marcus with an intensity that rooted him to the spot. She drew a ragged breath, her first in a millennium, and stumbled forward. Marcus instinctively reached out to steady her, catching her before she fell. You, she rasped, her voice cracking from disuse. Her language was unfamiliar, yet somehow Marcus understood every word. What have you done? I'm sorry, he stammered. I didn't mean to. 1,000 years, she whispered, clutching at his exosuit with surprising strength. 1,000 years of darkness. Of silence. Of nothing. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. And you free me with a kiss? Her last word dripped with equal parts disgust and fascination. It was an accident, Marcus explained, still supporting her weight. I tripped. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. 1,000 years of torment ended by an accident. The universe has a cruel sense of humor. She pushed away from him suddenly, testing her limbs as sensation returned. Her movements were graceful despite her long imprisonment, each gesture fluid and deliberate. Who are you? Marcus asked, unable to tear his gaze away. She turned to him, standing tall despite her obvious disorientation. I am Thela Vex Moran, High Emissary of the Vashani Concord. Her eyes flashed with fading glory. Or at least, I was. The Vashani? They've been gone for a millennium. Pain flickered across Thiela's features. Gone. Disappeared. Vanished. No one knows what happened to them. Thiela's shoulders slumped slightly before she regained her composure. And who are you, accidental liberator? Marcus Blackwood. Human archaeologist. Human, she repeated, the word foreign on her tongue. I know not this species. We're relatively new to interstellar travel, Marcus explained. Just a few centuries. Thiela approached him slowly, her gaze analytical as she studied his features. Without warning, she pressed her palm against his cheek. Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation where their skin connected, a warmth that spread through his body like electricity. There is something. She murmured, confused. The curse leaves its mark on both the imprisoned and the liberator. Marcus felt lightheaded suddenly. What do you mean? We are bound now, you and I, Thiela explained, removing her hand reluctantly. A connection I neither expected nor desired. His comm unit crackled to life. Blackwood. Do you copy? We detected an energy surge. Thiela hissed at the unfamiliar sound, backing away. I'm fine, Marcus responded quickly. Just discovered something unprecedented. I'll report back soon. He switched off the comm before Reeves could ask further questions. Your people will come looking for you, Thiela stated. It wasn't a question. Yes. But they don't have to be enemies. Marcus extended his hand cautiously. Let me help you understand this new time. And in return, perhaps you can tell me what happened to your civilization. Thiela regarded his outstretched hand with suspicion. Then, with deliberate slowness, she placed her palm against his. Very well, Marcus Blackwood, she said, his name sounding exotic in her accent. But know this, I have enemies who would see me imprisoned again. Breaking my curse will have alerted them. Our time is limited. As if to underscore her warning, the chamber trembled slightly, ancient dust drifting down from the ceiling. Then we should go, Marcus said, feeling an unfamiliar protectiveness toward this mysterious being. As he led her toward the exit, he couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into, and why, despite the obvious danger, he felt more alive than he had in years. The journey back to the research base was tense. Marcus had convinced Thiela to wear his spare environmental suit, hiding her alien features beneath the helmet and layers of protective gear. She moved awkwardly in the unfamiliar clothing, but understood the necessity of concealment. Your colleagues, she whispered as they approached the prefabricated structures that formed the expedition's headquarters, will they accept what I am? Marcus hesitated. Honestly? I don't know. Humanity has encountered other sentient species, but nothing quite like you. Nothing with your history. Thiela's dark eyes studied him through the helmet's visor. Then perhaps deception is our wisest course. We'll say you're from another research team, Marcus decided. One that got separated in the ruins. It won't hold up forever, but it'll buy us time. The plan worked, barely. Technician Reeves raised an eyebrow at Thiela's reluctance to remove her helmet due to respiratory sensitivity, but the chaos of an unexpected electrical storm hitting the camp provided sufficient distraction. Marcus secured them a private quarters, ostensibly to interview the stranded researcher about her findings. Once alone, Thiela removed the cumbersome helmet and inhaled deeply. The phosphorescent patterns across her skin pulsed with relief. Your atmosphere is tolerable, but strange, she noted, running slender fingers through her silver-white hair. Everything about this time is strange. Marcus couldn't help but stare. In the artificial light of his quarters, her beauty was even more otherworldly, sharp cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes completely black except for faint purple irises, skin that seemed to shimmer with internal light. Is there something amiss with my appearance? Thela asked, catching his gaze. Marcus flushed. No, I'm sorry. It's just, you're not what I expected to find on this expedition. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Nor did I expect to be awakened by a being from an unknown species. She paused. This bond between us, I can feel it strengthening. Can you? Marcus nodded slowly. Since their escape from the temple, he'd become increasingly aware of a strange connection, brief flashes of emotions that weren't his own, an inexplicable awareness of Thela's presence even when she was out of sight. What exactly is this curse? He asked. And why were you imprisoned in the first place? Thela moved to the small window, looking out at the alien landscape she once called home. When she spoke, her voice was distant, as if reaching across the centuries. I was High Emissary of the Vashani Concord, tasked with maintaining diplomatic relations between our 12 worlds. We were prosperous, advanced far beyond your current technology. She turned to face him. But prosperity breeds envy, and power attracts those who would abuse it. She sat on the edge of the bed, her posture formal despite her obvious exhaustion. The Concord was led by a council of 13. I discovered that 3 council members were secretly planning to overthrow the others, to establish themselves as supreme rulers. When I confronted them with evidence of their treason, they used ancient forbidden magic against me. Magic? Marcus interjected skeptically. Thela's expression hardened. Call it what you will. Advanced energy manipulation, perhaps. The science behind it escapes even the most brilliant minds of my people. The ability to transform matter, to bend reality itself, to your species, would that not appear as magic? Fair point, Marcus conceded. Please, continue. They could not kill me outright without raising suspicion. So they devised a more elegant punishment, eternal imprisonment. My body transformed to stone, my consciousness trapped inside, aware but unable to move, to speak, to die. Her voice broke slightly. They displayed me as a warning to others who might oppose them. Marcus moved closer, instinctively reaching for her hand. At his touch, a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. Thela didn't pull away. The curse had one escape clause, as all such bindings must. Only the touch of desire from a being not yet walking among the stars can break the prison of stone. They thought it impossible. Your species hadn't even discovered fire when I was imprisoned. Wait, Marcus said, suddenly uncomfortable. Touch of desire? You mean when I kissed you? Thela's bioluminescent patterns flickered with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as amusement. The curse interpreted it as such. Intention matters less than action in ancient bindings. A thought struck him. You said breaking the curse would alert your enemies. But after 1,000 years. The 3 who imprisoned me wore rings that granted unnaturally long lives, Thela explained. If any survive, they will know I am free. And they will come for me. She leaned closer to him, her scent reminiscent of exotic flowers and ozone. For us. The binding connecting us ensures that. Without warning, she placed her palm against his chest. Marcus's heart raced as warmth spread from her touch. Your physiology is remarkably similar to ours, despite your external differences. Is that unusual? Marcus managed, intensely aware of her proximity. Convergent evolution across star systems is rare, she whispered. Her fingers traced up to his neck, his jaw. I find it fascinating. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The attraction he felt was overwhelming and unfamiliar, deeper than physical desire, as if something within him recognized something within her. Is this the curse? He asked hoarsely. Making us feel this way? Thela's dark eyes searched his. The curse created a connection, but it does not manufacture emotions. Her hand still rested against his cheek. Whatever this is between us is genuine, if perhaps, accelerated. Marcus leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met gently at first, then with increasing urgency. The phosphorescent patterns on Thila's skin glowed brighter, casting dancing lights across the room as she pressed herself against him. Her skin was warmer than human temperature, soft but with a subtle texture like velvet. She pulled back suddenly, eyes wide. "Your people," she gasped. "Is this acceptable? In my time, diplomatic unions between different species were common, but your culture?" Marcus smiled. "Humanity has evolved beyond such prejudices, for the most part." He brushed a strand of silver hair from her face. "But that's not what's happening here, is it? This isn't diplomacy." Thila's patterns pulsed in rhythm with her quickened breathing. "No," she agreed, pulling him back toward her. "This is something else entirely." Later, as they lay entwined beneath the thin expedition blankets, Thila traced patterns on Marcus's skin, recreating the luminescent markings of her people. The storm outside had intensified, rain lashing against the windows of the research station. "I never asked," she said quietly, "what your people are doing here, on what remains of my world." Marcus propped himself up on one elbow. "We're archaeologists, historians. We study lost civilizations to understand our past and, hopefully, avoid repeating their mistakes." "And what do your histories say of the Vashani?" Thila asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Very little," Marcus admitted. "Your people vanished suddenly. The prevailing theory was some kind of natural disaster or pandemic." Thila's laugh was bitter. "If only it were so simple." She sat up, the sheets falling away from her bare shoulders. "After my imprisonment, the conspiracy I uncovered must have succeeded. The three traitors would have seized control, likely eliminating the other council members. An entire civilization, destroyed by internal politics?" Marcus asked incredulously. Thila's expression darkened. "You underestimate the weapons we possessed, Marcus. The three conspirators controlled our most devastating armaments. If the other worlds resisted their rule." She didn't need to finish the thought. Marcus pulled her closer, offering what comfort he could against memories of a devastation she hadn't witnessed but had perhaps inadvertently triggered. "The morning comes soon," Thila murmured against his chest. "We cannot stay here. Your colleagues will discover me eventually." "Where will we go?" Marcus asked. "There is a sanctuary, a place even the council didn't know about. If any of my people survived, they might have sought refuge there." She looked up at him, her alien features softened with an emotion that transcended species. "It's a perilous journey, and I cannot guarantee your safety." Marcus smiled, gently tracing the luminescent patterns along her arm. "I think we're well past guarantees of safety, don't you?" Before she could respond, a distant alarm began to wail. Thila tensed in his arms. "What is that?" she demanded. Marcus was already reaching for his clothes. "Perimeter breach. Something's entered the camp." Thila's eyes widened with fear. "They found us already," she whispered. "We must leave. Now." They fled into the storm, Marcus hastily grabbing his field pack and emergency supplies as Thila donned the environmental suit once more. The research camp had erupted into chaos, security personnel rushing toward the northern perimeter while scientists hurried to secure sensitive equipment against both the intruder and the intensifying weather. "This way," Marcus whispered, guiding Thila toward the southern exit where a row of terrain vehicles sat waiting. He had driven the six-wheeled rovers countless times during survey missions. Taking one wouldn't go unnoticed, but it would give them precious hours of lead time. As they reached the vehicle, a bone-chilling howl cut through the storm's fury. It wasn't a sound any local fauna could produce, too structured, almost mechanical, yet unmistakably alive. "Vrector," Thila breathed, her voice tight with fear even through the calm system of her borrowed suit. A hunter. One of the elite guardians that served the triumvirate. Marcus fired up the rover's engine. I'm guessing reasoning with it isn't an option? It's not a person, Marcus. It's a construct, part biological, part mechanical, programmed for a single purpose. Thela gripped the dashboard as the rover lurched forward. To return me to my prison. They roared away from the camp, headlights cutting through the storm's darkness. Behind them, Marcus caught glimpses of confusion as his colleagues noticed the departing vehicle. His comm unit buzzed repeatedly, but he shut it off. There would be no explaining this, not now. The sanctuary, he shouted over the rover's engine. Which direction? Thela pointed east, toward the mountains that loomed as dark shadows through the rain. The Valley of Whispering Stone. It lies beyond the third peak. For hours they drove in tense silence, the rover struggling against increasingly difficult terrain. The storm finally began to subside as dawn approached, revealing a landscape both beautiful and alien, crystalline formations jutting from red earth, vegetation that seemed to pulse with its own internal rhythm. We should rest, Marcus suggested as they reached a sheltered overhang. The rover's power cells need time to recharge, and we could both use some sleep. Thela nodded reluctantly. Inside the cramped vehicle, she removed her helmet, silver hair tumbling free. The luminescent patterns on her skin glowed dimly, reflecting her exhaustion. The Vrector will not rest, she warned. It does not require sleep or sustenance. Then we'll have to be smarter, Marcus replied, reaching into his pack. He produced a small device. Portable cloaking field. Experimental tech we use to observe wildlife without disturbing them. It might mask our presence, at least temporarily. He set up the device outside the rover and activated it. A slight shimmer in the air was the only indication that anything had changed, but according to the readings, their heat signatures and the rover's electromagnetic output would now be disguised as ambient radiation. Inside the vehicle, Marcus converted the rear storage area into a makeshift sleeping space. They lay close together out of necessity, the rover not designed for comfortable accommodation. Do you think we lost it? Marcus asked, pushing aside his guilt at abandoning his team without explanation. Thela turned to face him, her dark eyes reflecting what little light filtered through the rover's windows. No. But we've gained time. She traced a finger along his jaw. Time is precious, Marcus. I've lost a millennium of it already. She kissed him then, not with the urgent exploration of their first encounter but with deliberate slowness, as if memorizing every sensation. Marcus responded in kind, his hands finding the strange, beautiful patterns on her skin that intensified beneath his touch. Your people, she murmured against his neck, do they bond as mine do? Bond? Marcus asked, distracted by the sensation of her skin against his. A connection beyond physical joining, Thela explained, guiding his hand to a specific pattern over her heart. Among my kind, true union creates a permanent link, thoughts, emotions, sometimes even shared sensation. Marcus hesitated. Is that what's happening between us? Because of the curse? The curse created a bridge, she said, her voice soft. But bridges can be crossed from either direction, by choice. Her eyes held his, questioning. Would you cross it fully, Marcus Blackwood? The implication was clear, this would be more than a physical relationship, more than a fleeting connection between a human and an alien refugee. It would be something permanent, something that would change him fundamentally. I've spent my life studying the past, he said, cupping her face. Maybe it's time I started building a future instead. Their lovemaking was different this time, more than physical pleasure, it felt as if something was flowing between them, energy or consciousness itself transferring back and forth with each touch. The patterns on Thela's skin spread temporarily to Marcus's body wherever they connected, glowing with increasing brightness as their movements became more urgent. At the moment of climax, Marcus felt a sudden flash of awareness, not just of Thila's body entwined with his, but of her thoughts, her emotions, fragments of memories not his own. For a brief, transcendent moment, he experienced what it had been like to be imprisoned in stone, the endless darkness, the silence, the desperate clinging to identity as centuries passed. Then it was gone, leaving him gasping. "I felt you," he whispered, stunned. "I felt what it was like, the prison." Thila pressed her forehead against his, their breathing synchronizing. "And I felt your loneliness, your search for meaning among the ruins of civilizations and not your own." She smiled sadly. "We are both displaced persons, in our own ways." They drifted to sleep intertwined, the initial bond between them now deeper, more complex. Marcus dreamed of crystal cities and ships that sailed between stars, of diplomatic councils and betrayals, fragments of Thila's memories filtering through their connection. He woke suddenly to Thila's hand covering his mouth, her eyes wide with terror. "It's here," she whispered, barely audible. Outside the rover, moving with unnatural silence despite its bulk, was a figure that defied easy description. Humanoid in basic shape, it stood nearly 8 feet tall, its body a disquieting blend of metallic components and what appeared to be living tissue. Its head swiveled with mechanical precision as it surveyed the area, sensor arrays where eyes should be glowing with cold blue light. The Vrector paused, turning slowly toward their hidden rover. The cloaking device outside blinked a warning, power levels critical after hours of continuous use. "If it finds us here, we're trapped," Marcus whispered. Thila's expression hardened with determination. "Then we must ensure it doesn't." She closed her eyes, concentrating intensely. The luminescent patterns across her body brightened, pulsing in a complex rhythm. "The bond has restored some of my abilities. I can create a diversion, but we must be ready to move the instant it's distracted." Before Marcus could protest, Thila pressed her palm against the rover's wall. Energy surged from her, passing through the vehicle's frame and into the ground outside. 50 yards away, a crystalline formation suddenly shattered with a sound like breaking glass. The Vrector's head snapped toward the noise, its sensor arrays intensifying. After a moment's hesitation, it moved toward the disturbance with frightening speed. "Now!" Thila hissed. Marcus gunned the rover's engine, abandoning stealth for raw speed. They shot out from beneath the overhang, tires throwing up rooster tails of red soil as they accelerated down the mountain slope. In the rear-view display, Marcus saw the Vrector halt its investigation and turn toward them. It raised an arm that transformed into what could only be a weapon, energy gathering at its tip. "Hold on!" Marcus shouted, swerving violently as a beam of blue energy lanced past them, striking a rock formation that immediately crystallized and then shattered. "Don't let it hit us," Thila warned, bracing herself against the rover's frame. "That energy doesn't just destroy, it imprisons. Like what was done to me." Marcus pushed the rover to its limits, navigating the treacherous terrain with reckless abandon. Behind them, the Vrector had begun pursuit, moving with impossible speed for something its size, leaping from outcropping to outcropping like some monstrous predatory animal. "The third peak," Thila pointed urgently. "We need to reach the valley beyond it. The sanctuary has defenses the hunter cannot penetrate." "If we live that long," Marcus muttered, hands tight on the controls as another energy beam narrowly missed them. Thila placed her hand on his shoulder, and Marcus felt a surge of strength flow into him, his fatigue momentarily forgotten. "We will survive this, Marcus Blackwood," she said with quiet intensity. "I did not wait 1,000 years to be free only to lose everything now." Their eyes met briefly, their newly formed bond conveying more than words could express. Then Marcus returned his attention to the treacherous path ahead, determination renewed as they raced toward the promise of sanctuary, and the hunter raced to stop them. The rover crested the final ridge, its engine protesting as Marcus pushed it beyond its design limits. Before them stretched a breathtaking vista, a hidden valley nestled between towering peaks, filled with structures that seemed to grow organically from the landscape rather than being built upon it. Crystal spires caught the light of the twin moons, refracting it into 1,000 prismatic beams that danced across the valley floor. "The sanctuary of eternal light," Thela breathed, her voice filled with reverence and relief. "It still stands." As they descended the winding path toward the valley, Marcus glanced at the rear sensors. The Vrector remained in pursuit, but it had fallen back, moving with more caution as they approached the sanctuary. "It fears this place," Thela explained, noticing his observation. "The sanctuary was created by the first Vashani, before even the Concord. Its defenses operate on principles beyond even the understanding of those who imprisoned me." They reached the valley floor, the rover's wheels now gliding over a smooth surface that resembled mother-of-pearl. Structures rose around them, beautiful and alien, their purpose indecipherable to human eyes. No signs of current habitation were visible, no movement, no lights beyond the natural luminescence of the materials themselves. "Are we alone here?" Marcus asked, slowing the vehicle as they approached what appeared to be a central plaza. Thela's expression fell. "It seems so. I had hoped." She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. "The sanctuary itself is what matters now. Its power can restore what was taken from me." They stopped before the largest structure, a dome that seemed to phase between solid matter and pure energy, its surface rippling like water yet maintaining a perfect hemispherical shape. Thela stepped from the rover, discarding the environmental suit that had concealed her. In the light of the sanctuary, her true nature was even more evident, the luminescent patterns across her skin pulsing in harmony with similar patterns etched into the structures around them. "This place recognizes you," Marcus observed, watching as dormant systems throughout the valley began to activate at Thela's presence. "I am of the old bloodline," she explained, extending her hand to him. "Those who built this place, who understood the fundamental forces of creation. The Triumvirate feared my lineage as much as they feared my opposition to their plans." Together they approached the dome. At Thela's touch, an opening appeared, the seemingly solid surface parting like curtains to reveal a chamber within. They stepped inside, and Marcus gasped in wonder. The interior was vast, impossibly so, given the dome's external dimensions. A space that seemed to contain its own sky, its own horizon. At the center floated a sphere of pure energy, pulsing with colors beyond human description. "The heart of Vesh," Thela explained, her voice hushed. "The wellspring from which my people drew their greatest powers." She began to move toward it, then staggered suddenly. Marcus caught her, alarmed at how her skin had paled, the luminescent patterns flickering weakly. "The curse," she explained through gritted teeth. "Its effects linger, draining my strength. I must reach the heart to cleanse myself completely." Marcus lifted her into his arms, her weight surprisingly light against his chest. "Then I'll get you there." Each step toward the heart grew more difficult, as if they were walking against an increasingly powerful current. Thela's breathing became labored, her eyes squeezing shut against obvious pain. "Let me bear some of it," Marcus said, remembering their bond. "You said we were connected, use that connection." Thela's eyes opened, meeting his. "It could harm you. Your physiology isn't adapted for this kind of energy transference." "I don't care," Marcus insisted. "You've suffered enough." After a moment's hesitation, Thela nodded. She pressed her palm against his chest, directly over his heart. Immediately, Marcus felt a crushing weight descend upon him, not physical pain, but a psychic burden of immense proportions. Centuries of isolation, of consciousness trapped in immobility, flooded through the bond between them. He staggered but didn't fall, accepting the burden even as it threatened to overwhelm him. Together they pushed forward, step by agonizing step, sharing the curse's weight between them. When they finally reached the heart, Thela extended a trembling hand toward the pulsing energy. The moment they connected, a shock wave of power erupted outward, throwing Marcus backward. He landed hard, momentarily stunned. When his vision cleared, he saw Thela suspended in the air, her body arched as energy from the heart flowed into her. Her skin glowed with increasing brightness, the patterns across her body now blazing with light so intense it was difficult to look directly at her. The process lasted only moments, but to Marcus, it seemed to stretch into eternity. When it finally ceased, Thela descended gently to the floor, transformed. Her appearance hadn't changed, yet somehow she seemed more solid, more present, as if she had been partially transparent before and now was fully materialized. Thela? Marcus approached cautiously. She turned to him, her eyes now luminous with internal light. When she smiled, it was with a newfound confidence. The curse is broken completely. I am whole again. They embraced, and the contact sent a pleasant shock through Marcus's system, like static electricity but warmer, more intimate. Thela laughed at his startled expression. My natural energies have been restored, she explained, running her fingers along his cheek and watching as faint luminescent patterns briefly appeared on his skin in response. And our bond has deepened because of what we shared. Their lips met in a kiss that seemed to connect them on every level, physical, emotional, spiritual. Thela's newly restored energy flowed between them, heightening every sensation. Marcus felt as if he could perceive the individual atoms of her being, could taste the starlight in her cells. When they separated, breathless, a warning chime echoed throughout the sanctuary. The Vrector, Thela said, her expression hardening. It approaches the outer boundary. They moved back outside, where display fields had materialized above the central plaza. They showed the hunter stalking the perimeter of the valley, testing the invisible barriers with cautious probes of its weaponry. It cannot enter, Thela assured him, but neither can we leave while it waits. Then we end this, Marcus said firmly. You have your power back, can you defeat it? Thela considered this. Perhaps. The Vrector was designed to be nearly indestructible, but with the heart's energy flowing through me. She looked at him, concern in her luminous eyes. But you would be in danger. Marcus took her hand, feeling the energy pulse between them. I think you're forgetting something important. What? We're bonded now. He squeezed her hand gently. Your power flows into me as well, doesn't it? Understanding dawned on her face. Yes, but untrained, uncontrolled. Then teach me, he interrupted. Quickly. What followed was a crash course in energy manipulation unlike anything in human experience. Thela guided Marcus through the basics of channeling the power that now flowed through their bond, teaching him to direct it, focus it, release it in controlled bursts. Your body wasn't designed for this, she cautioned as he practiced. It will tax you heavily. Marcus managed a strained smile as he successfully generated a small sphere of energy between his palms. Noted. But I'm not letting you face that thing alone. By nightfall, the Vrector had completed its circuit of the sanctuary's perimeter. It had positioned itself at the only entrance to the valley, the same path Marcus and Thela had used to enter. It's intelligent, Thela observed. It knows we must leave eventually, and it's prepared to wait. Then we don't make it wait, Marcus replied, checking the makeshift energy projectors Thela had helped him construct from components in the sanctuary. We bring the fight to it, on our terms. They finalized their plan as the twin moons rose higher. The bond between them had become a tactical advantage, allowing them to communicate with minimal words, to coordinate their movements with uncanny precision. As midnight approached, they stood at the sanctuary's boundary, looking out at the hunter that patiently awaited them. In the moonlight, its hybrid nature was even more apparent, organic muscle fused with mechanical components, a perfect killing machine designed for a single purpose. Are you ready? Thela asked, her skin glowing with barely contained power. Marcus nodded, feeling the unfamiliar energy humming through his veins. As I'll ever be. Thela raised her hands, and the sanctuary's barrier before them shimmered and parted. The Vector's sensor arrays immediately locked onto them, its body tensing in preparation. "Remember," Thela whispered, "we need only disable it long enough to reach the portal chamber I showed you. From there, we can access the network that will take us beyond its reach." Marcus gripped her hand one last time. Together, then. They stepped beyond the barrier, power crackling around them like a storm about to break. The Vector rose to its full height, weapon arm transforming as it prepared to fire. Thela moved first, unleashing a torrent of energy that forced the hunter to dodge. Marcus followed her lead, his own attack less refined but still powerful enough to keep the creature off balance. The Vector adjusted quickly, analyzing their pattern of attack. It fired a precision blast that nearly caught Thela, forcing her to erect a hasty shield that drained her reserves. "We need to synchronize," she called to Marcus. "Through the bond." Understanding her intent, Marcus opened himself fully to their connection. Immediately, he felt Thela's consciousness intertwine with his own, their separate powers merging into something greater than either could produce alone. Moving in perfect harmony, they launched a coordinated assault. Where Thela's energy struck, Marcus's followed in precisely timed succession, creating resonance patterns that the Vector couldn't predict or counter effectively. The hunter staggered under their combined onslaught, its system struggling to compensate. For a moment, victory seemed within reach, and then it adapted. Its entire form shifted, reconfiguring into a more defensive posture. Energy beams lanced from multiple points on its body, forcing Marcus and Thela to separate. "The portal chamber," Thela shouted, deflecting a beam that would have crystallized Marcus instantly. "We need to reach it now." They began a fighting retreat toward a crystalline structure at the valley's edge, the access point to the ancient transportation network Thela had described. The Vector pursued relentlessly, its attacks growing more precise as it learned their capabilities. A blast caught Marcus in the shoulder, instantly numbing his left arm. He cried out in pain as crystalline patterns began spreading across his skin. "Marcus!" Thela was at his side instantly, her hands moving over the affected area. The crystallization halted, then receded under her touch. The delay cost them. The Vector closed the distance with frightening speed, its massive form looming over them. At point-blank range, it prepared a blast that neither could hope to avoid. In that moment, something shifted in their bond. The energy flowing between Marcus and Thela suddenly intensified, responding to their shared fear and determination. Acting on pure instinct, they raised their hands together, fingers intertwined. The power that erupted from them was unlike anything either had generated before, a perfect fusion of their energies that struck the Vector with devastating force. The hunter's form convulsed as conflicting energies tore through its systems, organic components failing as mechanical parts overloaded. With a sound like tearing metal, the Vector collapsed, its sensor arrays flickering and dying. Exhausted but triumphant, Marcus and Thela stumbled toward the portal chamber. Behind them, warning signals indicated the hunter was already beginning self-repairs, damaged but not destroyed. "It won't stay down for long," Thela warned as they reached the chamber. "But it bought us the time we needed." As she activated the ancient controls, the air before them shimmered, forming a doorway of pure energy. Through it, Marcus could see a landscape unlike any on this world, a city of impossible architecture beneath an emerald sky. "The last refuge of my people," Thela explained, hope and apprehension mingling in her voice. "If any survived, they would have gone there." She turned to Marcus, her eyes searching his. "Once we step through, there's no returning to this place, or to your people." Marcus looked back at the fallen hunter, then at the woman beside him, alien yet now more intimately connected to him than any human could be. The choice, he realized, had been made long before this moment. "Let's go home," he said simply. "You're home." Hand in hand, they stepped through the portal, leaving behind the sanctuary and the slowly recovering hunter. As the portal closed behind them, energy cascaded around them like falling stars, carrying them toward whatever future awaited in their new world. Part 5, New Beginnings. The portal's energy subsided, leaving Marcus and Thela standing on a platform overlooking a sprawling cityscape unlike anything human eyes had ever witnessed. Crystalline towers reached toward an emerald sky where 3 moons hung in impossible proximity. Gardens floated between structures, suspended by forces Marcus couldn't begin to comprehend. The air itself seemed alive with energy, tingling against his skin. Nexera, Thela whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The hidden world. It still exists. Marcus steadied himself against the platform's railing, his body adjusting to the subtly different gravity and atmospheric composition. Through their bond, he could feel Thela's tumultuous emotions, joy, relief, apprehension, all intermingled. You never truly believed we'd find anyone, did you? He asked gently. Thela's luminescent patterns pulsed with acknowledgement. 1,000 years is a long time, even for my people. I hoped, but... Her voice trailed off as movement caught her attention. Figures approached from a nearby structure, their forms similar to Thela's but with variations in height, build, and the patterns decorating their skin. They moved with cautious curiosity, weapons held discreetly but unmistakably ready. Stay behind me, Thela instructed, stepping forward. She addressed the approaching group in a language Marcus couldn't understand, musical and complex, with tonal shifts beyond human vocal capacity. The apparent leader of the group responded, surprise evident in his stance. A rapid exchange followed, tension gradually giving way to astonishment. The leader lowered his weapon, then dropped to one knee. The others followed suit. What's happening? Marcus whispered. Thela's expression was a mixture of disbelief and wonder. They know who I am. My family line, it was thought extinct. The royal bloodline. Royal? Marcus echoed. You never mentioned that part. A small smile touched her lips. High emissary was my position, not my birthright. The latter complicated matters in diplomatic circles. The leader rose and approached, studying Marcus with undisguised fascination. He spoke again, this time addressing both of them. He welcomes us to Nexera, Thela translated. And he wishes to take us to the Council of Elders. My presence is apparently significant. I gathered that from the kneeling, Marcus remarked dryly, earning a quick smile from Thela. They were escorted through the city, drawing stares and whispers from every Vashani they passed. Marcus felt their curious gazes, their subtle examination of his alien features. Through the bond, he sensed Thela's growing unease. What's wrong? He asked quietly. There are so few, she replied, her eyes scanning the sparse population. Barely thousands where there should be millions. And no children. I've seen no children. Their escort led them to a central structure that seemed to be composed entirely of light given solid form. Inside, a chamber opened before them, where 7 elderly Vashani sat in a semicircle. Their skin patterns were faded with age, but their eyes held the same luminescent quality as Thela's. The leader of their escort announced them with formal reverence. When Thela stepped forward and introduced herself, a murmur of astonishment passed through the council. One elder, her silver hair cascading past her shoulders, rose with visible effort. I am Saris, first elder of Nexera, she said in perfect, unaccented English, clearly for Marcus's benefit. For 1,000 years, we have preserved what remains of our civilization. And now, the last daughter of the royal line returns to us. Her gaze shifted to Marcus. With a bond made of a species unknown to our records. The formal reception gave way to an intense debriefing that lasted hours. Thela recounted her imprisonment, her release, and their journey to Nexera. The council explained in turn how a faction of survivors had escaped the civil war that followed the Triumvirate's coup, establishing this hidden colony on a world phase-shifted from normal spacetime, unreachable except through the ancient portal network. Our population dwindles, Saris explained gravely. The genetic damage from the weapons used in the final days of the war has rendered most of us sterile. Each generation grows smaller. We have perhaps 2 centuries before extinction claims us. Unless, another elder interjected, his gaze fixed on Thela, the royal bloodline provides salvation. Your lineage was always the most resilient, the most adaptable. The implication hung in the air, uncomfortable and unavoidable. Thela's fingers tightened around Marcus's. I sense you wish to speak with me privately, Thela said to Saris. Perhaps while my bondmate is shown suitable accommodations? The journey has been taxing for him. Marcus wanted to object but felt Thela's gentle mental nudge through their bond, a request for trust, for patience. He nodded reluctantly. A young Vashani male was assigned to guide Marcus to a dwelling prepared for them. As they walked through the Twilight City, Marcus's guide, Kalen, overcame his initial reticence and bombarded him with questions about Earth, about humans, about the changes to the old homeworld over the past millennium. Their assigned quarters were luxurious by any standard, a suite of rooms in what appeared to be a prestigious district, with views of the entire city. Technology beyond human comprehension provided every comfort, adjusting automatically to Marcus's physiological needs. The High Emissary will join you soon, Kalen assured him before departing. Left alone, Marcus paced the rooms anxiously. The bond between them remained, but Thela was deliberately muting the emotional connection, sharing only enough to assure him of her well-being. Whatever discussion she was having with the council, she wanted to process it privately first. Hours passed. Marcus found himself on a balcony overlooking the city, watching the 3 moons trace their complex orbits across the alien sky. The beauty was undeniable, yet he felt a sudden, sharp longing for Earth's simple, singular moon. It's beautiful, isn't it? Thela's voice came from behind him. Marcus turned to find her standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Are you all right? What did they want? Thela joined him at the balcony, her shoulder touching his. They offered me leadership. The last of the royal line, returned in their greatest need, it's the stuff of prophecies and legends. And you said? That I would consider it. She turned to face him fully. Marcus, my people are dying. The council believes my untainted genetics could be key to reversing the damage that's killing them slowly. Marcus absorbed this. So they want you to, what? Have children? Create a new generation? Essentially, yes. Through traditional means and advanced genetic science. She reached for his hand. But there's a complication they didn't anticipate. Me, Marcus stated flatly. Us, Thela corrected, squeezing his hand. Our bond. It's unprecedented, a link between different species. The energy we share, the connection we've formed, it's changing you, Marcus. Subtly, gradually, but undeniably. Marcus hadn't wanted to acknowledge it, but he'd felt the changes since their battle with the Vrector, increased sensitivity to energy fields, occasional flickers of luminescence beneath his skin when emotions ran high, dreams filled with stars and worlds he'd never seen. The council fears this bond, Thela continued. They don't understand it, can't control it. Some see it as a contamination of the royal bloodline. Others see potential, a new path for our species' survival through adaptation rather than preservation. And what do you see? Marcus asked quietly. Thela's patterns brightened with emotion. I see the man who freed me from eternal imprisonment. Who risked everything to help me. Who shares his mind and heart with me across a gap between species that should be unbridgeable. She cupped his face in her hands. I see my future, whatever form it takes. Their kiss was gentle but electric, the bond between them flaring with intensity that illuminated the balcony with reflected light. When they separated, Marcus noticed something he hadn't before, a subtle pattern on his own skin, faint but unmistakably similar to Thiela's markings, visible briefly before fading. "So what happens now?" he asked. "We have a choice," Thiela replied. "We can remain here. I would take my place on the council, work to save my people. You would be accepted, eventually, though always viewed as an outsider." She took a deep breath. "Or we could return to Earth. The portal network connects to many worlds, including the one you call home. You would leave your people? When they've just found you again?" "They survived 1,000 years without me," Thiela said with a sad smile. "And our bond means I would never truly be the salvation they seek. Any children I might bear would carry the changes our connection has created." She looked out at the city. "Perhaps that's what they truly need, not a return to the past, but a bridge to a new future." Marcus considered this, the weight of the decision settling on him. To stay in this alien world, forever an outsider despite his connection to Thiela. Or to return to Earth, where Thiela would face the same challenges in reverse. "There's a third option," he said slowly as the idea formed. "The sanctuary on your homeworld, it still stands, protected. With your knowledge and my connections to the human settlement, we could establish something new there. Not just Vashani, not just human, but a meeting place. A beginning." Thiela's eyes widened as she grasped his vision. "A colony. A place where both our peoples could learn from each other. And from the past," Marcus added. "Your civilization fell because of division, secrecy, fear of difference. What if we built something founded on the opposite principles?" "The council would resist," Thiela warned. "Many would see it as diluting what remains of our culture." "And many humans would feel the same," Marcus acknowledged. "But not all. Not the ones who matter." They spent the night discussing possibilities, planning, dreaming. Through their bond, ideas flowed back and forth, refined and expanded by their complementary perspectives. By morning, they had drafted a proposal for both the Vashani Council and the human authorities, a vision of cooperation that might save both a dying alien culture and enrich a young, still evolving human one. Presenting it to the council proved as difficult as expected. Objections were raised, concerns voiced, fears manipulated. But Thiela stood firm, her royal heritage lending weight to her arguments, her diplomatic experience countering every objection with reasoned responses. "We stand at a crossroads," she told them finally. "Continue as you are, clinging to purity as your numbers dwindle to nothing, or embrace change and live. The choice seems clear to me." The debate lasted days. Marcus found himself becoming an impromptu ambassador for humanity, fielding questions about Earth's cultures, governments, and values. Slowly, the tide of opinion began to shift. Younger Vashani, faced with the prospect of being the final generation, proved particularly receptive to the idea of a new beginning. On the 7th day, the council rendered its decision. They would support a limited exchange program, a small number of volunteers who would return with Thiela and Marcus to establish the joint colony. If successful, more would follow. The night before their scheduled departure, Marcus and Thiela returned to the balcony of their quarters. The three moons were aligned in a rare conjunction, bathing the city in multicolored light. "Having second thoughts?" Marcus asked, sensing Thiela's contemplative mood through their bond. "Wondering what the future holds," she replied. 1,000 years ago, I fought to save my civilization, only to be imprisoned and forgotten. Now I return, and instead of restoring what was lost, I'm helping to create something entirely new. Isn't that the ultimate form of diplomacy?" Marcus suggested. "Finding a path that preserves what's essential while adapting to new realities?" Thiela smiled, her patterns glowing with affection. "When did the archaeologist become so wise in the ways of diplomacy?" "I had a good teacher," he replied, pulling her into his arms. "A high emissary, no less. Their lovemaking that night had a ceremonial quality, a celebration of the path chosen, an affirmation of their bond. The energy that flowed between them illuminated the entire suite, their shared consciousness expanding to encompass both their pasts and the future they were building together. In the aftermath, as they lay entwined, Thela traced the now permanent patterns that had formed on Marcus's skin, subtle echoes of her own luminescent markings. "You know this makes you something new," she whispered. "Neither fully human nor Vashani, but something in between." "Like our colony will be," he replied, kissing her forehead. "Like our children might be, someday." The word hung between them, full of possibility and uncertainty. Thela's hand drifted to her abdomen, a smile playing at her lips. "Sooner than you might think," she said softly. "Our energies are compatible in ways even the Council didn't anticipate. The changes in both of us, they've made something possible that shouldn't be." Marcus stared at her in wonder, understanding dawning. "You're..." Thela nodded, her patterns pulsing with joy. "The first of a new generation. Neither purely Vashani nor human, but a bridge between worlds." Marcus pulled her close, overwhelmed by emotions too complex for words. Through their bond, he shared his joy, his fear, his love, and felt hers in return, a perfect harmony of sensation and feeling. "From a curse to a blessing," he whispered against her hair. "From imprisonment to freedom." "From ending to beginning," Thela completed, her arms tightening around him. "1,000 years was worth the wait for this, for you, for us, for what we'll build together." As the alien moon set and a new day dawned, they remained wrapped in each other's arms, no longer an archaeologist and an ancient alien diplomat, but partners in a future neither could have imagined alone. The bond between them pulsed with life and possibility, a connection forged across time, space, and difference that would shape not just their lives but the destiny of two civilizations. In the heart of Nexera, the portal chamber was being prepared for their journey home, not to Earth, not to the old Vashani homeworld, but to a new world they would create together, beyond the boundaries of what either species had dreamed possible. And in the gentle curve of Thela's abdomen, the ultimate proof that curses could become blessings, that endings could become beginnings, that love could transcend even the boundaries between stars. Tomorrow, they would step through the portal and begin the work of building that new world. Tonight, they celebrated the miracle that had brought them together across 1,000 years of waiting, a journey that had begun with a statue and an accidental kiss, and would continue into a future limited only by what they could imagine together. Beyond stone, beyond time, beyond difference, a new story was beginning.